Welcome back to Hovey Smith School of Self-Reliance. Make your own job, anytime, anywhere, at any age. Lesson 4. On this lesson, we are going to do a process of self-evaluation, which is one of the more difficult tasks for a person to do because you're evaluating yourself, and of course you're a bit prejudiced about all this. Well, we want you to try to come up with as an independent evaluation as possible, just like you were interviewing another person for a job. So think about that, and think about that in this way. The first topic is physical attributes. What do you look like? Well, I'm an average-looking sort of guy for my age. Nothing particularly special. I'm not a huge person. I'm not grossly overweight, nor am I terribly, terribly skinny. And most of us would fall into this average category. Now, there are some of you, as young people, who are, quite frankly, handsome if you're guys, or beautiful if you're gals. Well, use this. The reason being that people will accept you and what you say just by gross appearances. If you're a beautiful gal, yeah, most guys will talk to you about nearly anything. If you're a handsome guy, well, gals will pay more attention to you than another person who's not so well favored. So use this as an advantage. As teenagers, many of you take inordinate concern about matters of appearance. Well, some of this is, quite frankly, in my opinion, in excess. But if you have these physical attributes, well, sure, what in the world is wrong with using them and developing them? And the answer is absolutely nothing. As young people, I had and you have physical abilities that you will lose as you grow older. So it makes sense to take advantage of these whilst you're young. Now, this is what I did. I was always interested since high school in geology and archaeology. But I found that with a little research that at the time I was growing up, positions in archaeology were almost non-existent. Yes, you could be a university professor, and that was about it, and those positions were pretty few, and at the time they didn't pay very well. You might have an exciting lifestyle, but you couldn't earn any real money. Geology, on the other hand, although the field has its ups and downs, and I experienced those, you could make some serious money doing geology. And so that's a profession I chose. I was physically able at the time, and so as a geologist, I could trek with a pack on my back 13 miles a day in rough country, up and down mountains and valleys and ridges and so on and so on and so on, take samples and record results and all of this kind of good stuff, all day long, day after day after day. Well, I can't do that anymore, but I could then. And so I led exploration parties. Many of these were in the United States and were vehicle supported, but others were in Alaska. And you were put out in the morning by a helicopter, and you stayed there all day until the helicopter picked you up at night, if it did. Well, if the helicopter did not come that night, you were out in the woods by yourself all night. Not much you could do about it. Well, we could talk back to camp. We could do that sometimes. And, of course, we would attempt to. And almost invariably, fluff, 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 fluff. Yep, you would get pulled out. Well, as my physical abilities deteriorated as I grew older, I could not do that quite so well anymore. So, in my 60s, yeah, I sort of gave that bit up. And I started relying more and more on my writing, which I had been doing all along. And started doing, instead of magazine articles, I traversed to books, which take more time to research, but they ultimately will bring in more revenue because you write a book once and you sell it over a period of years, decades even, and you ultimately will earn more from it, although it takes longer to do it. So we chose that as a major profession. Now I could still walk fairly well, and I could still hunt, and I did. And then, well, got where I couldn't run with the dogs anymore. This age thing again. So I turned to writing novels and business books rather than outdoor stuff. So the physical abilities changed in life as to what I could do. And yeah, they affect us all, so you have to sort of plan on these along the way. So besides actually what you look like physically, what you can do physically are significant in making future job choices, depending on your stage in life. Another important factor is your willingness to learn. If you are a young person and eager, well, yeah, you want to learn all kinds of stuff. I mean, that is what a child does. Between birth and going to grade school, yeah, he's continuously learning. Every day, everything he looks like, everything he touches, yes, he's learning. And learning is easy and comes fairly rapidly in these stages, particularly things like language. So teach your children, spend time with them if you can, and bring them along as well as you can at home before they ever go to school. Now at school, a regimen is installed, which the child may have had somewhat at home, but is now much more strictly regulated. This is done at a certain time, this is done at a certain place, and so on and so on and so on, and this day's schedule is set out for the first time. Now in the United States there's preschool, which sort of helps things along, gets the child ready to go to school. He knows his name, he knows how to write it, perhaps. He's starting to learn alphabet and numbers and this sort of stuff. So when he starts the first grade, yeah, he's sort of a bit of a step up. That is a plan. And through grade school, oftentimes things go pretty well if the home environment is okay. He's presented with new, fresh stuff every day, some of which he likes better than others, and that's understandable. But generally, the learning goes fairly well through the early grades. Then social factors start to interact. And there becomes, in some students, a resistance to learning. You can't teach me anything. I won't learn. No, no, no. Well, that may sometimes occur and is serious, and if you're a parent, very, very concerning. When your child starts skipping school, when he gets older, say 10 years old and older, and all of a sudden he winds up on the street and he's supposed to be at school, and he doesn't go, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah, this is a serious matter. What to do? Try to find something that interests the child intensely, and then show him that going to school is a way to get there. You're not going to be whatever you want to be in later life unless you put up with these things, some of which you might not like, in your younger life during grammar school and high school. It's just not going to happen. You've got to have that degree. So, are you willing to learn? Well, my wife married very early, before she even graduated from high school, and she did not get her high school degree. She went back, she got a GED, okay? Then she started to go to a state college nearby, about 30 miles away, and got a degree in microbiology. My wife was a very intelligent person. She made A's, whilst also working a full-time job and commuting 30 miles to school, to college. She did that. By this time, her children were grown and they were away from home. Well, she accomplished that, and at the time of her death was working on a master's in business education, which she very nearly achieved until she got disillusioned with the idea because she didn't like the ethics of it. And so she, of her own choice, of her own volition, dropped out. But she pursued her education, and she was willing to learn and an eager learner for as long as she lived. She was very interested in the American Civil War and reading about that, for example. And she gathered a library of materials on that. And she was also interested in what I was doing, and for, well, a brief period, we were actually employed by the same company, which is how I met her, actually. Organizational skills. Do you have these? I refer to my own life because I know me better than I know anyone else. During the time I was working as an exploration geologist, and even before, when I was a lieutenant in the Corps of Engineers, and we had to learn to organize stuff. Well, Engineer Officer Basic at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, was one of the areas where I learned these organizational skills. Okay, how do you run a platoon? How do you run a company? And I was ultimately executive officer of a company of engineers, which is a large company of men, by the way. It's over 200, one of the larger units in the military service. And we have various things like cranes and dozers and, well, people, of course, as well as the usual infantry equipment and arms. So all of these we had to learn about and train on every year. And so, particularly as XO, I had to organize stuff. As an exploration geologist, I led crews in Alaska. And we would fly out to our base where we would set up with all our equipment, with all our gear, and we would be there all summer long, although we would receive periodic resupply missions to keep us in food and whatever else we needed. And each day I had to organize the work for 8 people. Okay, what will we do to cover the area that I needed to cover? And these may be hundreds of miles of areas. Okay, we go out and we take sediment samples. These would be analyzed, and when I came back, I would analyze the results and write the reports and try to finish up my reports by December so I could return back to Georgia for Christmas and so on. And we did this for more than a decade. And you have, obviously, the need to organize people's activities and also organize information so you can write it in a report. Now, if you're going to start your own business, other sets of organizational skills are necessary. You have to know how to keep books. You have to know how to have an inventory, how to keep up with it, know what you sell, know what it costs, know what profit you make, if any, and continue on with your business as well as personnel problems. You may not have this skill or some aspect of it. So you hire people who do. Maybe only temporarily, maybe on income tax time, do you need to hire a specialist to finish up on your income tax. All right. Maybe you need to hire a lawyer to actually take you through the steps of establishing your business in a legal fashion. And that's okay. So if you don't have it, all right, get it if you can. But if you still can't, or these conditions exceed your capabilities, then you hire someone on a temporary basis to do these tasks. Language abilities are another subject. If you are a recent immigrant to the U.S. and you have children, please have them retain their native language. Language skills, and I don't care what language it is, are valuable. So attempt to do that. Sometimes this may be more possible than others, but these will serve them well in later life if they speak their native language as well as their own. Not only speak, but read it and write it. We live in a very multicultural society. The ability to react worldwide is excellent for English speakers. So if one was going to learn a foreign language, well, English is becoming and has become the language of international trade. Many, many people outside of yourself will speak English. When I go to France, for example, or when I go to Germany, for example, I have no real problems in finding someone to converse with me in English. Once I went to Italy, and I went to a university and I was looking for a particular book. I was wanting to find out something about an aspect of Sicilian culture. Now I can sort of read Italian, but I don't speak it at all. So I went to the university and I found out where the library was. And I went and I talked to some students there. And there were 6 students sitting around a table working on their stuff. I was doing a gross interruption because it's getting close to exam time. And they were prepping for their final exams. But they took some time to help this foreigner try to find out what he wanted. Well, of the 6, 5 spoke excellent English. None speak English in the manner of the Godfather. That is a derived and artificial language strictly for the movies. I never have met anyone in the United States, in Sicily, or in Italy who spoke anything like that. Someone may once have somewhere, but I have never met them. But if you have language abilities, by all means, retain them, and if possible, improve them. Educational achievements and goals. Well, as I said in the case of my wife, yeah, you need your basic educational achievements. This may be high school and this may be college. These days, in most parts of the world, and particularly here in the U.S., there are junior colleges or senior colleges or branch campuses held in many, many towns. My little town of 6,000 has 2 college branch facilities in this town, which is somewhat amazing to me. And they teach courses at a college level. So you don't have to go out of town like my wife did to get an education, to get an advanced education. Well, take advantage of this. Sometimes very valuable material is offered through what may be ex officio events. There are oftentimes college clubs, particularly at the main campus. You may have a drama club, for example. You may have a literary club. You may have a geology club, and so on and so on. And these exist. And on many occasions, you don't necessarily have to be a member of the college as a student. As a professional, you may attend and are oftentimes welcome. As an interested party working in the field, you may attend and are oftentimes welcome. Can you start your own projects? Now, this is a vital skill. It's comparatively easy to be told to, you do this, and you do it this way, and you put nut B on post A. And that's your job. Well, all right. This is what assembly line work is. You're given a task, you do that task day after day after day after day. And it's the same task every day. And in the 20th century, that was a lot of people's jobs. Now that we are in the 21st century, things are changing very, very rapidly and have already changed for many people. And that is automation. Machinery has become so complex and so evolved that it is possible for machines to do much of the work that people once did, even to the point of taking part B from station 16 and moving it to station 17, which may be on the other side of the plant. So, fewer people are involved in assembly line work anymore. Those jobs are gone or going very, very rapidly. What do these people do? One option is exactly what I'm advocating. You start your own job anytime, anywhere, at any age. Exactly that. But that first word is start. Can you start your own projects? Are you familiar with doing this? And do you have the willingness to take the risk? Because sometimes you will succeed, and perhaps more times you will succeed not so well or even fail. Well, yeah, that's the way it goes. If your attempts to avoid failure are so strong that it prohibits you from starting, then you're behind the 8 ball and can go absolutely nowhere. So you've got to overcome these. Now, starting your own projects is something I've done quite commonly. Well, that's what a kid does at play, really. He starts his own project. It might be a sandcastle. It might be something else. It might be a drawing. That's a project. He starts it. Okay. That's starting a project. It can be as simple as that. It can be as simple as outlining the steps that a project will take. Okay, I need a name. I need a location. I need a product. I need to advertise that product. I need to sell that product. I need to keep track of the money. Yes, you need to do all these things. I need to pay taxes. I need to pay myself and our employees, and so on. So can you organize things in a logical progression? Can you do these things in real life? Hunting is somewhat complex, particularly the hunts I used to do on the Georgia islands. Yeah, you would get drawn for a hunt. You would gather all your gear together, your camp gear. You had a tent. You had to have a stove to cook on. You had to have food. You had to carry your own water. There was no portable water on the island. Water for washing dishes, yeah, but not for drinking. Alcohol if you wanted some. What you were going to kill the game with. My photography equipment, and so on and so on and so on. Tents, of course. Clothing of all sorts. Clothing for sleeping, clothing for hunting, clothing for wet weather, clothing for cold weather. Yeah, all of the stuff. Pack it up. Move. Get it down to the island. Move. Unload it at the dock. Get it on board the boat. Get it to the island. Take it from the drop-off place to your campsite. Set up your tent. And get ready to hunt for the next 3 days. Typical hunt. Well, yeah, this takes some organizational skills, because if you didn't have it there on the island with you, and if you couldn't borrow it from another hunter or have him give it to you, you were up the creek. If you had the gun and no ammunition, no, that didn't do you much good. If you were black powder hunting like I did, and you brought everything with your percussion caps, what? You'd better borrow some in a hurry or you're not going to shoot anything. And as I recorded my results and made YouTube videos in many cases, I had to have the camera equipment with me and record myself with cameras, both video and fixed still cameras along the way. And can you do these things by yourself? After you've done it once, hopefully you've made a list. So the next time you go, you have your list and you've added to it so you don't leave anything behind and say, yeah, I got this. So I am really ready to go. It's also increasingly important these days to be able to work with others. Again, using my life, sometimes some hunts are so complex that they require other people to assist you. Now, one of these hunts was a snow goose hunt in North Carolina. Snow geese are geese that live in the Canadian Arctic, and they fly down through Alaska and come down across the United States diagonally and winter in coastal North Carolina and somewhat in Virginia. And these snow geese come in the tens of thousands. Yeah, they do. And to hunt them, you have to put out hundreds of decoys. And you have to have calls, and we hunt them, snow geese, in both winter and spring, whereas all other waterfowl are hunted only in the fall. Why have such an elaborate season? And why have such a huge bag limit of 25 birds a day, which in modern day sounds excessive? The reason is the snow geese are eating themselves out of house and home in their breeding territories. It is warming, and they are thriving to the extent that, yeah, to save the birds, we have to reduce the population. And that is why there's both a spring and fall season, and the limits are so huge. But to handle this many birds, you need more people. So we hire guides, and you hunt with other people. because there's no reason to set up on a swarm of snow geese by yourself. There are enough birds for anybody. You may have a flock of 400 birds over the top of you, flying every which way. And so, if you're fortunate enough to be able to attract them and call them to your decoy spread. And so that's exactly what we do. And for this you need other people. So, in business, likewise, you will need other people. They may not be your direct employees, but they have to be suppliers if you sell objects, manufacturers if you sell objects that perhaps you designed but actually don't want to make. You want somebody else to make these things, and you pay them to make them, and then you process them and sell them, okay? Or to distribute them, or if you're in the arts, there are a few things more involved than going on a movie set and making a movie. You have locations, you have transportations, you have actors, you have script writers, you have directors, you have people running around all over the place. You have caterers who bring in food. An enormous herd of people it takes to produce a successful feature film. So, you have to be able to work with others. Core base of knowledge. Well, you've got to know something. That's a simple concept. If you're going to go in business, you have to know something about something. People who come to your store are coming to you as an authority on whatever it is you're retailing. Cheese, for example. If you're a cheesemonger, you pretty well better know your cheeses. You better know how long they last, how long you can keep them, when you have to sell them by, what they taste like, what can you tell a customer about them, how to use them. You've got to know everything there is to know about these cheeses if you're going to sell them effectively, because you have to sell them at high prices if you are going to make any money. You have to convince a person that this particular block of cheese is worth $40. What? And that can be a hard sell. But you've got to know enough about that particular cheese. That's from a small flock of goats in Portugal. Nowhere else in the world. Made, artisan made, flown over here, presented and packaged for your pleasure and convenience. All the way from a shed in Portugal to here. And only you can have it for $40. Wow. So this is how you have to have that core of knowledge. And I don't care what the subject is. If it's nails, you got to know everything there is to know about nails. How they're made, where they're from, what their specialities are. The nail is this long, all right. The nail is this long, all right. What does it do? How do you use them? How were they used? Are these antique nails from ancient structure somewhere? Maybe from a shipwreck? Or are these modern nails made in the same way, in the same pattern by a blacksmith, pound, 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 pound? And yeah, they're to go into your original or reconstructed log cabin. These are just like the ones they made in the 1700s. Exactly. And we charge you for it. All right. So, This knowledge can come from college, and it can come from university, it can come from experience. It can be something you gather from anywhere else. Bill Jordan, for example, started a camouflage company. And he sold his first box of t-shirts with a camouflage pattern on them at the SHOT Show. And that was his start. Finding out how to publicize his camouflage, he got with a family friend and they started turkey hunting. And he put out cassette videos, remember those on tape, and about turkey hunting to push his product, his camouflage clothing. And so he formed a team, and they went out and filmed turkey hunts all over the nation. This is how I learned something about turkey hunting, particularly species which I had never had an opportunity to hunt. There are 5 species of wild turkey running around, and he had hunted species I had not, so he could tell me how and what I would expect during a turkey hunt for those particular species in the Rocky Mountain states, or in Texas, for example, where I ultimately did take birds and wrote about them and so on and so on and so on. So this is how you expand that core of knowledge. And Bill Jordan made a very successful camouflage company. And he advertised it with these videos and DVDs and television programs ultimately. And you can still see Bill Jordan's son and sometimes him on TV today. Whoa. All starting from a box of t-shirts at the SHOT Show. Transportation. Well, we need something to drive in, typically. And if you live in South Florida, well, that might be a swamp buggy. That might be an airplane. But most of us, it's a pickup truck or a family car. But, you still have to get somewhere. So transportation expenses are a vital part of planning your job and how much these things cost, what it costs to run them, what it costs to deliver your products, or get to wherever you need to go for speaking engagements and this sort of stuff. All these things are costs that mount up, ultimately, which leads us to a later topic. Food restrictions. Food restrictions are significant, sometimes for dietary reasons for yourself, and more commonly worldwide for religious reasons. For example, here in the Southeast, we consume large amounts of pork products. Sausage biscuits, for example, are a favorite. And while it's okay to eat one of these occasionally, it's probably not okay to eat half a dozen of them. No, you really don't want to do that. Not at one time or any given period. You do not want to offend your audience by attempting to serve them these kinds of foods. And you also, for health reasons, want to be cautious of what the local mores are about how you serve them and so on and so on and so on. So if you are in the food business or if you handle foods, you have to be very, very cautious about all kinds of legal as well as social restrictions on consumption. Financial management. Farming is one of the most difficult of all tasks to do so far as financial management goes. You have to buy your seed, typically. You have to plant your crop. You have to put down fertilizer. You have to put down pesticide. You have to cultivate the ground. Then you have to harvest your crop, sometimes irrigate your crop, have to store it, and have to ship it. All of these expenses you may have to absorb before you ever get a payday. Now, when that payday comes, if that amount received is less than your total cost from all of the preceding, you're down the tubes, guy. Well, the same is true with any business. If your total cost, and cost means everything, like the transportation I just talked about, your facility, the shipping, how you sell it, what your raw materials are, what your payroll is, blah, 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 your electric bill, got to keep the lights on, got to get heat in the building, so on and so on and so on. If you can't sell your product for more than your total cost, you're losing money. And maybe that is a business that you really don't need to be in. If you are in the arts and you'll say, well, I am an artist. I can't sell stuff. Oh, terrible, terrible. Well, you better get over that, guy. Because I don't care what you're doing, if you're an artist or if you're not, you have to sell your products. And most of the time, that means selling you. As mentioned when we started, if you're physically attractive, well, that's a little easier. But, yeah, you still have to sell your stuff. And how do you learn how to do this? Well, you learn basically by doing. And that is starting small, putting out ads, and we'll have another whole course on ads, so don't worry about that too much right now. But if you can't do it, if you absolutely can't do it, then you combine with someone else who can. Now, the Austin Film Festival, which I attended a few months ago, I pitched my screenplay. And I also entered it into the Austin Film Festival contest, which is a very good contest, by the way. They give you good feedback on your stuff. And you see how it ranks among the others who submitted. At this last Austin Film Festival, there were 10,000 entries. I had one. Whoa. Of these 10,000, there were perhaps 5 categories and 5 winners. And it was good to make the second cut. Well, I didn't make the second cut. That was my first attempt. Many people don't. And then if you made the second cut, you progressed to another cut, the finalist. But if you were a finalist, you got to present your pitch before members of the industry who might buy your screenplay. Good, good, good. And hopefully win in one of the categories. Excellent if you did. But there are only 5 out of 10,000. The odds are terribly, terribly slim. So if you're planning on making money as a screenwriter, woof, you better have something else in the background. So, what do you do? Well, the old saw is that how thus and such an actress was discovered while she was waiting tables in Hollywood. So yeah, if you're going to be in a long shot business in the artistic field, being a sculptor or painter or whatever, before you get discovered, quote unquote, or even after you are, you need some business to pay the bills in the meantime, before your ship comes in, if it ever does. One of the most significant things you can do to improve the chances of your business succeeding is to develop good communication skills. In high school, I was very lucky. At that day and age, we had declamation, we had one-act play. Then I wrote, of course, the usual amount for essays and such. Got to college, wrote more, then started selling magazine articles, then later did technicals writing for industry, then went to novels, nonfiction books, one-act plays, and then now am maybe even ultimately I'll write music. So I've developed a lot of skills along the way. Oh, radio too, incidentally. So these are very, very valuable. And these are things that you can develop and improve through life as you need them. If you have difficulty doing stand-up speaking, well, there are clubs that can help you. If you lack writing experiences, guess what? The best way to improve them is to write. Yeah. It may not be all that good at first, but you'll improve. Look at ads. Can you write a decent ad? Well, hopefully. You see a lot of ads, so everybody's seen them. You can't hardly get away from them. Can you write a better ad than you see? I think that in many cases you probably could. Ideally, in an ad, what you would like to do is to present yourself or your product or your services in an interesting and informative manner. You'd like to somehow do something to improve your viewer's or hearer's life. What can he get out of it? You don't want to say, oh, I'm such a great guy, look at what I've done. Well, that's not quite the way. But what you want to do is show your viewer what you can do for him. If you can do this and you can present it in an interesting way or fun way, yeah, you can write a decent ad. In more complex situations, you may be required to produce a poster. Well, there are programs that will have formatted posters for you. And all you have to do is find them, and sometimes you may have to buy the format, but that's usually not too much. And then you just fill in the blank blocks and make your poster. Boom, boom. And that's what I did when I went to China and presented to an international convention that was sponsored by the People's Government. So, you can do these kinds of things. Be versatile. Do some radio, okay, if you can. Do some video, which I think you must in modern day. I don't care what you do. If you're a lawyer, if you are an artist of any sort, if you are a writer, if you are a filmmaker, if you have a hardware store, if you sell widgets, I don't care. You need to do videos about whatever it is you do. One thing to avoid in doing videos is to get off topic. You want to be very narrow, so when the viewer comes to you, he knows exactly what he's going to see before he even finishes the video. He sees you, this guy sells cars. This guy sells nails. This guy sells pineapples. Well, whatever. But do the same thing or the same type of thing. Now you can expand a little bit. Now people like Stacey Harris, for example, who started out life, among other things, as a lawyer, an attractive model, and now is an outdoors woman, outdoors cook, and she teaches and has cookbooks, and she talks about family relations and raising a family in the outdoors, where all of her several children have different jobs and tasks, and they do these as a family together. And this is a very interesting lifestyle, and she's attracted quite a following. Now, when you go on YouTube or something like it, you will slowly attract a following. And the reasons that YouTube is so valuable is it is very inexpensive to produce. You buy simple equipment, you put in exactly the content you want, it stays up forever so far as we know, and you can change it or add to it or replace it anytime you please if you move locations. So that's no problem. You just revise your old videos and you put in your new location. Come see me at blah, 4th and Vine, or whatever it might be. So these are skills that you can improve throughout your life. In lesson 5, we are going to actually start you in producing and listing 25 different possibilities for jobs and businesses, which we're going to help you categorize later. You remember when I asked you to go back and get your old high school stuff or your old college stuff or your old business records and so on and look through these? Now it's vital that you have them. These will prompt your memory as to, oh, yeah, I really thought I might want to do that one day. All right, write it down. It's going to be a bit of a task to come up with 25 different business ideas from your own past, but it is possible if you do it diligently. So take the bull by the horns, go back through your old stuff, dust off the boxes, wear a face mask if you must, woof, 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 woof. Dig out these files, look at them. Oh, well, that was good. No, I'd never like that, no. Maybe put them down, organize them, and list them up. And then we'll tell you how to categorize these in the future lesson.